Welcome to Movie and a Beer, everybody. This is Dan bringing us in, and we have a really interesting, historically sort of accurate film to talk about on this wonderful episode with a couple of wonderful friends and co-hosts that are here to join us.
Indeed. Thanks for joining us, listeners. I'm Aaron. I'm your Venus of Willendorf expert with maybe dubious historical accuracy.
Some dubious.
And this is Brian, your chainmail expert.
And there's a lot of chainmail in this movie, too.
Chainmail and the Venus of Willendorf. What movie could combine
the two?
So there's a lot of Beowulf kind of movies, oriented and pseudo movies out there, and a few that were actually just about Beowulf. This one is borrowing from the story. This is 13th Warrior, which is a production that came out in 1999. It has Antonio Banderas as the primary character. There's
Ahmad ibn Fadlan,
yes.
which it's part of Beowulf's story, but it's also part of this like historic, true, actual journal.
Yes,
that ambassador around the year 1000 actually made a journey and kept a journal
up to the Norsemen. And you had mentioned that in actually the actual journals and stuff. It was actually northern Russia.
Yeah, it went up the Volga River to the Rus, which were people think about Vikings and how they went into Britain and they raided France. Well, they also went east.
Yeah,
and the east was kind of like we think of the Wild Wild West in that time and place. It was the Wild Wild East. But they would go and they would trade. They would sail down to Constantinople and served as mercenaries. They had a wide range. They did. And there's a number of movies and TV shows. And if you've seen the long running show called Vikings, very much gets into all of that story. Entertaining, but not accurate.
Yeah, it's a fun thing to watch.
Right.
But we're not talking about that. We're talking about this film,
13th Warrior.
Yeah.
And at least some of the scenes are based on this actual factual account of this Arab Ibn Fadlan's journal from when he visited the Volga River and ran into some Rus traders.
Right. One of the only written accounts that we have of a Viking funeral, like burning somebody in a ship to send them off to Valhalla, comes from Ibn Fadlan and his journal, where he witnessed this. Kind of to his horror, he was not.
He was not on board with their religious practices.
Yeah. He had some reservations about the hygiene.
Yes,
and around the funeral rites. I think maybe the food as well.
And all of this is depicted in this film.
Yeah.
In a fairly realistic way before they wander off into the land of legend.
Yeah,
correct. And so they traveled north. So they're sitting there. He meets them because they're traveling down a river. He travels north. He meets them, and we can plot spoil a little bit because this film's been out for quite a while. Over 25 years. So I think it's okay to talk a little bit about it.
But I would encourage our listeners to watch this
it. If
film.
You haven't seen it,
it's very entertaining.
I know it's been on maybe like TNT or some of the one of the cable networks had it on. I've seen it a few times from that. There's like very, very little, actually no nudity, no profanity, no alcohol except for a little bit of drinking out of
there's
some
horn.
Mead. There's some mead. And basically, the gore, the blood that's in this is really minimal.
The violence is TV appropriate.
Yeah.
This is a made-for-TV movie, basically.
I think we called it like fantasy violence.
Yeah.
It's presented almost as like our heroes are fighting orcs.
Kind of. And it's kind of done that way. I mean, they don't know who the foe is that's attacking them and killing off the villagers. So there's an emissary that comes down to request help from another king, and our protagonist happened to have just met with them, and they were doing a funeral rite for their king who had passed in this location, and there's a translator that's with him that happens to speak some other languages, and somehow they're able to communicate using a mix of Greek and Latin and various phrasing and things, which is interesting because I don't know that much about the history around that, but some of the trivia says it's a little questionable, but it is what it is.
I actually really enjoyed how the movie handled language and how that was presented. Like so often we see, at least for American productions, everybody in the whole world speaks English, and if they're Russian, they just speak English with a Russian accent, or if they're Norwegian or Viking, then they speak, but they have a Norwegian accent. Like here, actually, the language becomes part of the
story at the beginning.
Story.
The first act is about that.
And I would like to point out, for me, this, if we make lists of movies, this movie would be my number one choice for the best handling of a foreigner learning a new language.
Yeah.
You just pay attention. He listens.
Yeah, so there's really an amazing scene in here where it's a montage of this Arab diplomat slowly learning Norwegian over the course of
days and weeks.
Yeah. And it's told with dissolves, but it's also really interestingly and intellectually told, where he's slowly, these cognates between Norwegian and English become English.
Yeah.
And he can understand the language. And from that point on, everybody in the film is speaking English, but it's probably Norwegian.
Yeah. But
it's really, really, really well done.
Yeah, agreed.
I would say this scene is the best done transformation of learning a language in any film I've ever seen.
So to piggyback,
they make it look too easy.
They make it look easy. To piggyback on that, we also had some beers along the way.
Yes,
which we digressed really quickly.
Movie and
a beer. So we had a couple of beers. We stopped after we grabbed some food this afternoon. We went down to a place that we haven't been many times. I've been there a few times. These gentlemen had never been. It was Imperial Bottle Shop down on Southeast Division. Great local spot. They've been there for a long while. Total supporter of the community. They have a couple of beer fridges that have decent selection of odd stuff, not necessarily things you're going to find at a Fred Meyer, but stuff you're going to, if you're looking for something interesting, they'll have it. They have, about 20 beers on draft.
Right. And dear listener, this is Division in beautiful Portland.
Yeah, Portland, Oregon. Southeast Division. Yeah. So they do a pretty good job. One of the owners was there, and we chatted with her a number of different topics and things, and even about kind of what's going on here at this moment in time around the United States. And it's interesting to think about how looking at movies, I'm digressing into my question. So looking at movies and what we're going through right now, and how communication is really, we talked about this with her and amongst ourselves a lot about the communication and like what's the story you're hearing, what's the story you see, what's the story, and it was even brought up in the film. It's like you can write words, right? You can write sounds. Mm-hmm. It's like, so these are completely illiterate from the standpoint they don't know how to read or write.
Right. Well,
but they know language and they know and understand history enough to know
communicated through ruins.
Yes.
Yeah. And the film is pointing toward the fact that we use an Arabic alphabet.
Correct.
Yeah. Arabic writing system.
It's fair to say, I think Old Norse, it was an oratory tradition.
Yeah.
They had bards and skalds, and Beowulf, which is part of the inspiration for this film, was probably recited orally for like 1,000 years before it was even written down.
Yeah.
And it was written down by these like Christian monks in Britain first.
So they had their own take on it.
They did.
It probably was perverted from the original oral intent.
One might assume that. And it's similar to so from a historical context, I really appreciate. So you have somebody who they questioned, who came into their environment and their world, and yet they understand and respect him enough because he's demonstrated both in action and like he picked up how to speak their language, and they're like, what? Because he just started speaking it back to them.
Right.
Out of the blue. Like he was around them for a while.
After observing for a month or two.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, they wouldn't be able to do, I guarantee you, not a single one of the 12 or 13 that got picked to go on this trip could have done that because they had no interest in learning.
They could have if the roles were reversed and there was one of them down in Baghdad, maybe. But I think it demonstrates an openness and a respect that you're intentionally going to try and learn a language.
Right.
Yeah.
It was a meritocracy.
Yeah.
So he was advanced to a brother.
Right.
His nickname was Little Brother.
Right.
By fact of his merit, his ability to play with the big boys.
Yes, and he had a small horse.
This was something that I did like about this film, though, is that, you know, he didn't necessarily start there, but he did come to be, you know, kind of this...
A respected member of the team.
Yeah, a respected member of the team. And, you know, I don't know, I'm trying to remember 1999. There probably weren't very many movies that had a Muslim protagonist, let alone a Muslim protagonist that featured so heavily, let alone one that's, like, portrayed in like, such a positive light.
Yeah. I mean, and that's what's really interesting. And he doesn't really have an Arabic accent. He has more of a Spanish accent.
Yeah,
that's okay.
An Arab portrayed by a Latinx man.
Yes,
right. Yeah, so it's not perfect in that way,
and that's okay. So this film was based off of, and the last iterations of it were directed by Michael Crichton, who had a 1974 novel that was based on kind of the stories. Now, it was digressed and changed, called Eaters of the Dead.
Which I heard he wrote that on a dare.
It's possible, yeah.
Like somebody dared him to rewrite Beowulf, or maybe it was Ibn Fadlan's story. Like, make that into a book. And Crichton said, yeah,
sure, why not?
Sure, why not? I can do that.
I'm good enough.
Yeah, right. Yeah. A little bit of ego in that, right?
Yeah.
There is. And I think how it got then changed over into something that we watch today, like this film, the story on the screen is going to be considerably different than the book that you read, obviously. But I think they did a really good job. The visuals, while this is an older rendition, I mean, it's 1999, so it's not 4K upgraded. It's not been redone in a higher quality, so it's grainy.
The CGI is a little dated.
The CGI is super dated.
Yeah.
I mean, stuff degrades over years, but even then, I mean, back then,
at the time, it wasn't your summer blockbuster,
correct,
A-list film.
No,
I wouldn't call this a B film, but it wasn't your top budget studio film.
Correct. And, you know, if you think about the other things that came out around that time, I mean, I can understand why this probably didn't have a lot of traction, because they're later in the early 2000s, there was more stories around Beowulf. There were other films that came out that were more fantasy based.
When was Gladiator? Was that 2000?
I don't know.
I don't know, but around the same time.
Right. Because I feel like that was so monumentally successful. Like so, financially, but also I feel like, just kind of had its cultural moment.
Yeah.
Because,
Gladiator was 2000.
2000?
Yeah.
Okay. So I couldn't remember if it was just before this one or just after.
Yeah. So, they're both in the same genre of kind of a historical epic.
Right.
But this one did not have quite the same star power or budget thrown behind it.
Right.
A lot of on-site scenes with an awful lot of rain.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how fun that was to do production.
Yeah, but I mean, shortly before, we could also look at Braveheart as a historical epic.
Oh, yeah.
So it would, I would call these kind of sword and sandal plus.
So I was going to ask, we were talking about Seven Samurai earlier today, or I don't think we talked about Magnificent Seven specifically, but there's sort of this.
Yeah, as we watch these movies, we often kind of comment and MS3K the movies.
Well, this is really like this one, isn't it? Yeah.
And I thought about the Magnificent Seven. There's a moment where the village is all getting together to fortify itself
against the
invaders with the small squad of professionals that have come in to save the town.
Right.
Yeah. And this is a very similar story.
I was thinking this is kind of like a Seven Samurai film. It's a little bit of a fish out of water movie, with Ibn Fadlan.
Yeah.
But also kind of a war movie, a war buddy movie also.
Right, yeah. Well, right. He becomes one of them by virtue of being a comrade in arms.
Yeah.
And competent as well.
And competent. Yes.
Yeah.
So the one of the things
and they're also, kind of the heroic warriors coming to make a final last stand to help a village who can't defend itself.
They traveled across water to go to this place because they were asked for help, and it's like, we have a treaty with them, so we have to help them. And back then that's what you did. They didn't send all of them. They picked 13. They called on the old crag to come in and throw some bones. And the last bone was like, they counted them off, and they stood up and said, I'll go. And then the last one said, you cannot be a Northman, is what she said. And that's why he got picked. And I think
the 13th warrior
Yeah.
13th warrior cannot be a Northman.
He was kind of voluntold that he was going to be.
I like that.
And there's other political kind of ploys that are occurring, and I think she, being the person running that moment in the story, understood, hey, there's a foreigner here, and we don't want to have a war with them. Let's try and understand them. It makes sense to me from a political standpoint. If you're going to try and build trust and have a relationship with another group of people, be it you know their language or not, and if you don't, like, you need to try even harder. It was really smart. It was a smart move to do. And then he kind of didn't want to do it, and then all of a sudden he's put into a position after the first raid on the village. They're there to protect it, and they get their ass beat. One of their people realizes that the king is old and there's a usurper here who's looking to take over the kingdom. And he has his men kind of infiltrated into the village. And these guys are smart enough to be able to say, oh, hey, I need to pick a fight with this dude. Right. Because we represent the king that requested us to come, and we are his warriors because he doesn't have any. So the dude challenges him and just plays with him in the fight, and then, takes him out. And after the guy acknowledges it's time to kill him, the guy he's facing, this really tall redheaded dude, who's like, oh, it's time to take care of you. And it's like, and they knew exactly what was going on.
I think it's part of, it demonstrates the martial expertise or the martial virtues of our 13 heroes, because, it's kind of this, I don't want to say it's an old trope, but maybe it's a familiar territory where, if there's 3 rounds of a fight, the first 2 rounds, a seasoned warrior or a very confident warrior will just feel out their enemy.
Feel out your opponent, and then you
find the weakness.
Yep, find the weakness. And then it's the third one where they actually attempt to strike and try to win. And we see that kind of same pattern here, where the first 2, it looks like one of our heroes is in real trouble because he's facing this really fearsome, very tall, and kind of, very energetic opponent. And then
he gets sidestepped and chopped.
Yeah, and then it's over very quickly when our one of our protagonists finally does respond.
Yeah, well, it demonstrates their professionalism.
Yeah,
their right to be there as heroes.
Right,
and also, I think they take an interesting step in that they acknowledge that it's unfortunate that they lost this really good fighter.
Yeah, but then
just to make an example.
But they're doing this kind of for their own safety. Because they know that they will have more trouble. They
can't work effectively unless they're hindered.
Yeah, if they don't have
the political elite of this town.
If they don't have the cooperation of the prince or his cadre of hangers on.
Hangers on, yeah.
So as far as production quality, as I mentioned, what we watched basically looked like a VHS recording, if you've ever seen those. Not super high quality. And I'm okay with that because I think it added to the mystique of some of the low light setting and some of the, it just felt more mysterious. And then, of course, the scoring was off the charts. I'm like, it was like,
yeah, they told us when to feel epic.
Yes.
Right, for sure.
It was,
but that's what this film was. It was a historical epic.
Yeah.
There were good guys and bad guys, and
I think the bad guys maybe are one of my criticisms. So we have this, Wendell, and I won't plot spoil too much because I do think the listeners ought to watch this movie, but they're not really explained very well.
No.
They're not given a lot of motivation. They're just very clearly, evil. And they're, very clearly invaders. They're very clearly the bad guys. And, as a viewer, we're asked to just buy into this. Mm-hmm. And I do. But it feels really one-sided where, we don't know, why are they coming down here? Do they have their own problems? Or, is there some kind of like blood feud that explains this aggression? Or like what? We don't know the context.
Right. Are they just a death cult?
Or they're death cult. And so it felt a little one-dimensional to me. Like they could have done a lot more with that. In particular with like, who's this high priestess of this maybe death cult?
Yeah. So I'm going to interject a theory.
Okay.
That's totally unfounded.
Let's hear it.
But do you feel that this film is an allegory of Christianity versus paganism? Because there's the company of 13, which is Jesus and the 12 apostles.
Correct.
Fighting the flesh eaters who worship the mother goddess.
Eaters of the dead who have their Venus of Willendorf.
Yeah.
Their cult.
They're the old pagan. They worship the old pagan gods. Even though the Vikings acknowledge that they worship
They have many gods.
They mention Odin. They talk about the fate, the three fates. They talk about their many
Valhalla.
gods.
Going to Valhalla, you have to earn your right.
Right. But on the other hand, you can also see it as, okay, this is Jesus and the three apostles, the great savior of the world against paganism.
Right.
Kind of, yeah.
Well, and our leader of our 13, his name was Baliluf, I think.
Yeah.
He dies as part of, and maybe that's not too big to plot spoil, but he dies as part of his role to achieve this group's goals.
Right.
And so there is a bit of self-sacrifice.
And at the very end, he is on his throne. He has finally been made king.
Right.
Because he said he doesn't have anything. He's not king. But his actions speak as if he is a king.
Right.
And the old king that called them up to come help them says that immediately. He's like, no, I knew your father, and you are his son, and you follow in his footsteps. And
I knew you when you were a boy, and now you're a man.
And you're here to protect us. And you are a king, even if you don't have anything when you're, we mentioned that, like, oh, they burned the ship with all the possessions on it. And that's the commentary is when the funeral scene at the beginning, it's just like, oh yeah, that's not cheap. They burn something that costs a lot of man hours and resources.
Hours and time.
Yeah, but the comment was
authority. Yeah.
The comment was that they'll need that in the afterlife. They'll need all those things.
Right.
Yeah.
If there is such a thing.
Well, they believe.
Well, they believed you would need your ship in the afterlife and your goods.
Right. Yeah, well, yeah, maybe.
How can you be a warrior in Valhalla without your sword and shield?
Right.
Odin shall provide,
or some mead, or other provisions,
and so that also came up. So there is, towards the end of the second battle that occurs, one of the 13 is drinking out of a horn, which is not uncommon for that back then as a reward or trophy, and the Islamic protagonist says, "I am not allowed to drink anything fermented from grain or from grape," and he laughs and says, "Oh, this is made from honey, so you're okay."
Right.
And he takes a sip, and it's like, hold on a second. No, it's anything fermented. It's not just from specific
religious lawyer Dan.
I know. No, I had to look that up. No, it's actually part of the trivia. It's like, that's one of the, like, okay, we just got to allow it because the character is doing his thing. I mean, he's already been kicked out of their country, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's a Hollywood conceit, but I mean, none of us are Muslim scholars here.
No.
So we have no authority.
I mean, the internet said don't do it, so I trust the internet.
I mean, he probably shouldn't have slept with his lord's wife to get banished in the first place. So
he probably just would have been decapitated, and that's also part of the trivia. It's just like, so it's unrealistic from the beginning. He
probably doesn't follow all the religious laws to the letter.
The real Ibn Fadlan was actually an ambassador. There was a chieftain in probably what's like Kiev or Ukraine now that promised to convert to Islam if Baghdad would send a whole bunch of money and military support, to help that chieftain against his enemies. And Ibn Fadlan traveled up, but the money train was delayed.
Didn't quite make it.
And so Ibn Fadlan, the ambassador, said, yeah, we're here. We have a couple of chests of gold on the way.
Believe me, it's on the way.
Wink, wink.
Yeah, but you promised to convert to Islam. Let's talk about this. And that's when he was actually taken captive. Well, he was an honored guest who could not leave for a while.
Yeah.
As it happens back in those days.
I think the story maybe had some creative liberty to say, well, okay, he was banished rather than actually sent on this kind of unfortunate.
Right. Yeah. So it's Hollywood. They're gonna pervert the story to meet their dramatic needs.
Right. But the story works. It's fun.
I think we would all recommend this film.
Agreed. I do think it does do a good job of showing this idea of like cultural exchange.
Yeah.
They're learning from each other in different ways. And it is kind of nice to see this growing respect amongst Ibn Fadlan, and then the 12 Viking warriors that he's journeying with.
Yeah, they accept him not based on his origin, but on his merits as a person, as a warrior.
And they could tell. I mean, so also within the religious context of, if you know you're better than the people that are around you, you shouldn't show them up. You shouldn't jump on your horse and go gallop around and jumping over everything to show them, yes, my horse is smaller than yours, but it's more agile and I have skills you don't. I mean, that's not very... I mean, I understand
That's
why
not
they
good
did
manners.
It's not good manners.
But he had a reason.
But he waited. He didn't do that initially.
Correct.
He waited until he was bullied for 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he did that to kind of show, like, no, there's a reason for it. And even, too, with a different style of sword, I think he had a scimitar versus... what are these
versus a broadsword?
Old broadsword. Yeah, like that agility and dexterity has some advantage too. So I think it's interesting, that we get to this this village. It does have some parallels to Beowulf. Instead of just one big monster, it's this whole like sort of tribe of what appears to be maybe Neanderthals or bear spirits or something. They're called demons at one point.
Yeah, just unstoppable wood people.
Yeah,
fucking wild
horde. It's a horde basically.
Wild horde.
But a horde that apparently has never
horses and armor
been defeated.
Really good weapons
and a bear suit for every one of them.
Yeah,
they all wore bear heads.
We meet these enemies, but there's a reference also to a fireworm or a dragon,
which is them just orally telling the story around they show it multiple times. In the first attack, they come down the mountain as a single line on their horses, each carrying torches.
Yeah.
And the spewing of the fire is them riding by and throwing the torches into the village to set it on fire.
To set thatch huts on fire.
Yeah. So, which is what happens.
Metaphorical dragon?
Yeah, it's a metaphorical dragon, yeah.
I was imagining there was a real dragon somewhere in this mythology that they were scared of.
He asked that. He asked the other warriors, he's like, was this a real animal? And then he's like, no.
Oh, maybe you guys were doing your Mystery Science Theater 3000 stuff over that. I missed that altogether.
Yeah. No, we
it's an attempt by the film to say, what if this is a possible explanation of a dragon?
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
And it seems legit. I mean, so from the filmmaking standpoint, in an outside scene, really locked off, you're at, so basically when you do filmmaking, there's the range of focus is either going to be within, 20, 30 feet, and then things outside of that are out of focus, or it's just locked off and it's like everything's in focus. And these are a lot of outside shots where everything's in focus, which is nice because then you get to see everything and shot on, and we guessed either Northern California or probably, Vancouver, BC or somewhere in Canada because of just the mountain ranges, the water, the scenery,
the fauna.
It looked very Northwestern to me. I'm like, I don't think there's that many sort of ferns that grow in Norway or Sweden, but they do in BC and they do here.
It was impressive because they did build the longhouse set in this landscape, and then you could see for like a mile out, and there was nothing.
There's nothing. So it was, and we don't know how much of that might have been CG'd, but probably not a lot.
Not a lot, because the CG in this film is very discernible.
Yeah,
it is.
Especially the longboats on the ocean.
Which is really super fake.
Which, I mean, and that I would say is probably, I think that was the only CG.
Yeah.
But I could be wrong.
No, probably. The fire appeared to be real. The other stuff seemed to be practical.
Everything was practical.
One thing I wanted to ask, I remember, I was working at Barnes & Noble during the time, but Beowulf had a moment. Seamus Heaney did a new translation of Beowulf. That was released, I believe, in 1999. It topped like the New York Times bestseller list for a while, which is sort of incredible for one of the earliest Anglo-Saxon Old English poems to have this resurgence of interest,
a moment in modern culture.
In modern culture,
yeah.
So, but I think you'd mentioned there were other retellings of Beowulf in film also. Like, do you remember what some of those examples are and how they compare and contrast to the 13th Warrior?
So this is very, I would say, more true to what you might believe actually happened. The other films were complete like fantasy monsters and
more creative
magic and shit.
Yeah,
or more poetic, more true to the poem. Maybe.
I only remember watching one of the many Beowulf films, and I thought it was horrible. It was just CG garbage. And the story was not very interesting. Okay. I really enjoyed this film compared to that.
Yeah.
That's my take.
If it's borrowing from the story and using it to tell what could have actually happened, I think from a historical standpoint, it's way more believable and more interesting to watch this than, Christopher Lambert running around with a glowing sword swinging at a monster, which is
all CG.
Which is all CG'd. And not believable at all.
I think if there's too much CG, that does kind of make it harder for me to stay interested. I don't know. Brian, I think you have a phrase of robots punching robots.
Yeah, robots punching robots. Just so much crap going on the scene,
right?
That you just can't follow anything.
Well, if you can follow, maybe you also don't care.
Right.
Well, yeah. And those films tend to, they're Hollywood blockbusters. They get released. There's a lot of fanfare around it. And back then, this is pre-internet. So you really just accepted what came out of Hollywood, and you didn't really have a choice. If you wanted to go see a movie, you had 5 or 6 to pick from, and you went to one of them or more.
Well, okay, 1999 is pre-streaming, but not pre-internet. Al Gore invented the internet.
Correct. I'm sorry. I apologize. Right. I apologize to the geeks at the
Mac
table.
Classic came out in 82.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so yes, the internet was around, but not in the streaming capacity.
Netflix mailed you DVDs in the mail.
Columbia House. How many cassette tapes did you buy from Columbia House?
Oh, like 12.
Thousands.
I had a lot. I owed them so much money, and I never paid, and it didn't matter.
Well, now they're going to find you.
They keep selling them, and they didn't care.
They're not selling CDs anymore. I guess,
I think they're probably going to come back with CDs. CDs are kind of green. We're really digressing, but I think CDs and albums are
vinyl. Vinyl is hot right now
because it's a physical thing and it has a different sound and tone.
You know what else is coming back? Leather armor. How did the costumes in this film play out?
Good question.
Okay.
You're the chainmail expert at the table. You've made armor. We have no.
Yeah.
I've read about armor.
Yeah. I've played enough D&D to know a little bit, but that's about it.
I would say one thing Wardrobe did in this film was to give each of the 13th warriors a different look, and it was extremely anachronistic.
Yeah,
there was 2nd century Roman gladiator armor.
I saw that helmet.
There was 14th century Gothic armor on the leader.
Yeah.
The only really accurate armor that was worn was by our main character. He was
thrown a little tunic of chainmail.
Yeah, he was chainmail, and chainmail is what the Vikings of the 6th to 8th century would have predominantly worn.
So iron was extremely rare and expensive. It was kind of difficult to work, and an enormous investment of time to craft all those little rings that make up a full suit of chainmail. It was hundreds of man hours.
Yeah, so the Vikings would have worn chainmail or a coat of plates, and a coat of plates is several little squares of iron sewn into a coat.
Right.
There wasn't any of a coat of plates in this film.
Yeah, I didn't see any either.
There were various iterations of leather armor.
Leather bracers, a couple of nasal helms.
With some cloaks, a couple iron.
There was one Scottish actor who actually had a kilt on the whole time.
Right, yeah.
And spoke with a kind of an accent.
and honestly, kilts.
And that's okay.
There's not a lot of historical writing on this, but kilts were primarily a 16th, 17th, 18th century conceit.
So, and this is supposed to take place in the year...
Was it like 800? I think,
800 to 900, like So the 10th century, give or take.
In all fairness to Hollywood, you need a way to tell the different characters apart. How many white males with a beard... If you've got 12 of them in a film, how are you going to tell them apart? Well, you need to give them a slightly different costume to help the audience.
Yeah. All right. That's believable. Now, as far as the children and the NPCs of the film,
You mean the extras?
The extras.
Extras, yeah.
The ones with non-speaking parts that were shuffled around. I mean, how would you feel if the lady in charge of you said, if they get in, don't let them take them? Like, murder me? Really? I don't know. That was at the end of the film, and I just laughed.
Would you rather be killed by somebody in your community that you know and trust, or be abducted by subhumans for a fate that could be worse than death?
To be eaten alive.
Yeah.
Well, eaten or turned into a slave. Who knows?
Some context. There's one scene where the woman guarding the children from the invaders is given a knife and said, "Make sure the children aren't taken alive."
Right.
So
I don't know. That probably happened in real life somewhere in a village.
I'm sure it did.
Absolutely, it did, and it happened in Israel during the Jewish rebellion against Rome in 70 A.D. at the famous fortress that I can't think of.
The one that was up on a pedestal.
Masada.
Oh, the Masada.
At Masada. They chose to die by suicide on the last day before Rome breached their defenses.
So the concept of death or people's relationship to death is culturally informed. And
yes, it is.
Old Norse, I think, has, I don't want to say more casual, but maybe more intimate relationship with death than we do in our culture. Where, I mean, even if you think of, Mexico, Latino cultures, the Day of the Dead, there's sort of this kind of celebration of the deceased and people that you have known that are now deceased. They have more of that ritual and more of that element in their culture than what we do. We prefer not to think about it. Sure. But if you're a Viking, death is all around you all the time. Most people die by the time they're 35 years old, and it happens for any number of reasons. You get an infection, and which is something that happens with a possible outcome with our hero.
Correct.
Of getting an infection and then you die, or you get hurt by one of these bear forest people and you die. People are dying all the time, and I think that changes the culture of how death is viewed. And it's not necessarily a finality like we think of it, but maybe it's just you're on the other side. If you died well, you're going to go to Valhalla and celebrate and then participate in Ragnarok as a good warrior would. And if you didn't die well, then that's more important than just the simple fact that you're dead. If you die well or not.
That seems legit. I don't know.
Maybe I should have been the death expert rather than the Venus of Willendorf. Yeah. So the Venus of Willendorf was this little statue found in Germany. It's like a fertility goddess, and the real thing is like 4 or 5 inches tall.
Yeah.
Here we have a couple copies that are like half the size, and then one in a cave that's like
ginormous,
like 3 times.
Very impressive.
Yeah, right. Somebody took a lot of time to carve out that relief in that stone.
Correct.
But yeah, that was I didn't know the Venus of Willendorf was going to feature in this movie.
Yeah.
So I have not seen it before. How does this compare to other films of a similar fantasy or historical standpoint, from visual storytelling, audio, the music and how the music was used? I mean, there's no mic drops. This is all just background scoring, to help emphasize a point or an emotion. There's a whole lot of other films that came out similar period of time as well as earlier. There are, I think, similar films that might treat the subject matter in a different way that emphasizes like the magical or mystical aspects. This one does none of that. This just says, oh, they think they're being invaded by a creature, and yet they're just men. That's the first thing they say is, oh, these are just men, and it gives us the ability to fight back.
Well, I was thinking, compared to Gladiator, this isn't exactly, I think, but you remember Hans Zimmer had this fantastic soundtrack for Gladiator that became a kind of its own, its own thing. Lisa Gerard, who was part of a band called Dead Can Dance, really beautiful vocalist that does such nice work. She sang some of these like pseudo-Roman, ancient and informed.
The Fields of Elysium.
Yeah, Brian, you know exactly.
I know what you're talking about.
And so I feel like, Gladiator used music in a way that's different than what was done here.
Yeah, I would say this film is definitely kind of score. And my personal opinion is that it's a little heavy-handed.
It is.
It's very much telling us, okay, this moment is going to be epic and this moment is going to be pensive.
Yeah.
And did it need that? Was because there was no dialogue and just a little bit of ambient noise coming from the screen. Did it need to tell the story?
I mean, this was not a bad film in any way, but this was not a film that was
breaking any norms.
Except for the
Muslim one protagonist is breaking a norm. I would say.
That's a story. That's a character thing, not a film.
The
thing.
language learning scene.
Yeah. Okay. But
broke a norm, but the rest of it is purely entertainment.
We don't get this setting very often either.
Formulaic, and that's what I was asking him. Like, are there other films that, like you said, like Gladiator? A lot of that was outdoor shots.
The Northman. We watched the Northman maybe a year ago.
A lot outdoor. I mean,
but that was 20 years later.
Yeah, right. Where they could learn, and they're like, oh, we can afford to shoot outside.
There was Eric the Viking around this area, which was kind of a Monty Python-esque Viking take.
I'm not familiar with that one.
There was the Vikings with Kirk Douglas in 1970 whatever.
Yeah.
And I mean, fun action film, but really can't be compared to this.
Yeah. So, Brian, the indoor scenes where they're in the longhouse talking to the king when they first get told to go, and then as well as when they get to the village and there's an indoor scene, and they're like, "Why is it raining inside?" Because there's a giant hole in the. Well, it's built that way so the smoke can escape from all the fires.
It's called an oculus.
Correct. Do you think that they actually that seemed like just an indoor set on the soundstage somewhere?
I think so, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, so the rain can be easily controlled in a soundstage. Yeah. I mean, it can be controlled on set or outside as well.
Yeah. You got a machine that's shooting water at you like a shower head, and you're like, this sucks.
They've got like maybe 8 scenes inside the longhouse, so I'm sure they just built a set on a stage somewhere and shot those 8 scenes back to back to back. I mean, that's the way it's done in Hollywood. Is if you've got a certain set, especially if it's big, you want to shoot all the scenes in that setting all at the same time,
where everything's supposed to be wet.
And in both instances where they were when they first got sent on the quest and then where they ended up, it looked the same on the inside. I'm like, I didn't really notice a whole lot of difference. So they probably made a few changes so it didn't look exactly the same, but I'm like, this looks pretty similar.
So did the rain have any significance? Because there were
a couple
of times in the film, and I wonder if maybe it was just kind of underscoring that Ibn Fadlan was from a place that's not very rainy.
Yeah.
This is a different culture. This is a challenge that's going to force him to grow.
Right.
That he would not have gotten had he stayed at home where it was easy.
Yeah.
A desert. And you even said as they move north on their horseback and they end up going through lands that have snow on the ground, and you're like, that's probably the first time he's seen snow, this character.
Imagine seeing snow for the first time if you grew up in Baghdad.
Yeah, you probably have no idea what that is. And you're like, oh, it's cold. It's raining. Oh, it's snow. It's actually snow.
Well, it's kind of probably marvelous and miraculous. But growing up in Minneapolis, snow is a fact of life. So
sure.
Every year. Not all year long, but just every year.
Long enough.
Yeah.
So we also drank beer. We did.
Yes.
So I think this is the point in the podcast where we're going to switch over and talk briefly about some beers that we had. We, as mentioned before, we're down over at Imperial Bottle Shop in Southeast Portland, and we picked out a couple. We had a pint there, chatted with the owner, and was like, "Hey, we're gonna grab some beers to go." So they have a couple of coolers, interesting things. I chatted with them about like what's their selection process, because it's not a lot of shelf space. So you kind of got to be picky and choosy about what you put on your shelf if that's, a source of income that you're relying on. And she's like, it's what the people want more than not.
Yeah.
Because they were really picky about she mentioned some labels and some brands. And I was like, yeah, I'm like, it's cool. I mean, they had 2 beers that are no longer in production on draft. They had one from Upright and they had one from Rogue, which are 2 breweries here in the Portland area that are Rogue is across Oregon. They have multiple locations or did, but that company went bankrupt, but
They closed,
which is really sad. They suddenly just closed. It was bad.
They shut their main brewery down.
Yeah. I mean, they are closed. They're in. They're going to sell off, and who knows if it's going to ever reopen under that name or not. But it's kind of sad to see it happen. And Upright being the other one, the gentleman who runs that brewery just decided to kind of retire and move on to something else. He's got a lot of beer in barrels and stuff. So they're going to be around in cans, or not cans, but bottles and on draft for a while yet, because he has a lot of beer to sell. But they're not being produced anymore, which is kind of sad. But it's
so probably in a year they're all done.
Year or less. They were known for more sour stuff. But anyway, I'm digressing. The we had the two beers that we chose. The gentleman at the table chose, which is awesome. I'm glad that they picked a couple out. One was from Weiss Beer called Kolsch Encounters, to not be mistaken for Close Encounters. So Weiss Beer out of Vancouver, they do 80s and 90s retro styles on all of their beers as far as the can art and the naming. And so, yeah, this is like, it looks like the movie poster from Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which is totally cool.
But we thought this was a cultural encounter.
Yes, it was a cultural encounter, which fit. And so this being a Kolsch style ale, which is what they call it, which is appropriate because it's not made in Cologne, so you can't call it Kolsch. I hate it when people do that. They actually have the umlaut over the O, so it's totally accurate from that standpoint in spelling and correct adjacent naming of the beer.
We need more umlauts.
We need more umlauts. It's exactly right. Is there any marketing copy on the can that you can find?
Not really. I mean, it's just Kolsch style ale with Roy Farms Adina hops.
Yeah. So this is a 4.5%, bright golden and crisp. I think it went really well with the beginning of the movie because there was a lot of interesting interaction as a lighter beer. It was easy to drink. This does have...
There was a lot of humor in the first half of the movie.
And there was sort of, when you first drank it, it was still a little more cold and hadn't warmed up, there's kind of a juicy pop that happens on the tongue. It kind of hits you hard a little bit and then kind of fades out.
I thought this was very clean, very easy to drink.
Yeah.
Pretty light, kind of exactly what I would want from a Kolsch. Or a Kolsch style ale.
So the primary hop is Adina hops, which I hadn't heard of before, but I'm glad they made it. So notes of lemon peel and wildflowers on the back, herbal zinginess. That just it lingers. The beer lingered on the palate a little bit, which some Kolsches don't really do. They may have more of a yeasty lingering than a hop linger. And again, so this is made in a Kolsch style, meaning you can cold crash it and let it sit at a colder temperature, but you're using an ale yeast. All right.
So I really enjoyed this. I thought it went really well with the first half of the film because it was kind of a lighter beer, and the first part of the movie is more light subject matter. There are kind of some jokes, kind of the fish out of water story with this Arab, with these Vikings. So I thought it matched the film exceedingly well.
That kind of Act 1, our protagonist has lots of questions of like, who are these Vikings? Why are they doing that? Who's their king? What's going on here?
Kind of discussed the cultural differences a little bit, but in kind of a funny way. The Vikings making fun of his horse, who brings a dog to war.
And they're barking at the horse for
like 20 minutes. Horse like it's a dog because it's so small.
Yeah, but relative to their horses.
And then the kind of fun joy of him showing them up because the Arabian horse can do these jumps and is so light on its feet.
Yeah.
And
correct.
And kind of the fun joke of them making fun of his mother in their language without realizing he understands them, and him giving back
just as good.
A good burn.
Just as good in their own language.
Yep.
A good burn back at the guy who got mad, and then everyone else is like, he just spoke our language. He just burned you hard. That's hilarious.
Awesome.
He's awesome.
He can hang. He's a little brother.
He is a little brother,
yeah.
And he had no problem with that name. I think he understood like his place. He's like, I'm here just to observe and to help when I can, because that's kind of what his job was. Like, he was sent out. He can't go home, so he has to make the best of his environment.
Well, in his home culture, it would be common for him to be called a brother by somebody else or sister, depending upon the perceived gender.
And even so, a brother at arms is still a member of the family.
Right.
Correct. Yeah. So any other thoughts on this interesting and quite good beer from Vice, again, out of Vancouver, Washington. I thought it was really good. It fit the style. The little punch and brightness is acceptable and really nice. It's got a nice citrus note.
When you say that little punch would differentiate it from other Kolsch's?
Yes.
Okay.
It's very American style. It's not, you wouldn't find that. They're going to be more yeasty in orientation. It's going to coat your tongue a little bit, and if there is any kind of flavor profile from the hops, it's going to be very mild. Kolsch's tend to be very light and not flavor forward.
Crisp and refreshing.
Yes.
Refreshing. Refreshing would be what the Eaters of the Dead are looking for.
Yeah.
I mean, and so I will have to say again, we did say there was some Barty. There's a little bit of gore in this. There's when they first find the people that got attacked by the bear people. Yeah. There's a little gory and a couple of scenes that were like, oh, that's squeamish. So if you're squeamish, you're forewarned that there's a couple of scenes.
Yeah, but it's not bad.
Yeah,
by modern standards,
TV
it's
standards,
really low grade.
It could be on cable without a blank.
Sure.
Yeah,
because you see worse. So yeah, check them out. Vice Beer has a location in downtown Vancouver as well as out in the east part of town. Again, we got this in Portland, so they are distributing across the bridge, which is awesome. I'm happy that we can find their beers here because they're pretty good. Any last thoughts before we move on to beer number 2? Hearing none, let's move on. So the second beer we tried, which we waited about an hour into the film to open up, was called Funeral Bock from Wayfinder Beer. And is there any copy on that can over there that you can help us with?
Double decocted black Bock. Black, toast, chasm, roast, punishingly dark. Oh, sorry, bleak. Punishingly bleak.
Punishingly bleak.
Yeah. So, I mean, that copy of those tasting notes don't match my experience. This was a pleasant beer. It was not punishing at all.
So the copy matches the film very well.
It does.
Yeah.
Is this an ale or a lager? Oh, I'm asking you. You drank it. Is it an ale or a lager?
Well, the difference is that one is fermented cold and the other is not. Right.
Correct.
So the cold is going to have kind of more depth and complexity of flavor.
Not always.
But isn't it general? Like Sharper.
Yeah. The yeast is going to give you more of a sharper edge.
This I think is an ale. So I'm going to...
It's not. It is a lager. Me? That's why I'm asking, because it's like you can make beer taste any way you want if you use the right process. It is cold fermented. This is using yeast that survives at that cold temperature, but because of the decoction process, so decoction is you take a certain amount of the wort out as you're boiling it or bringing it, not boiling, but you're bringing it up to temperature. So the mash at different stages sits for a certain amount of time at a certain temperature to release the enzymes and the proteins and stuff that are in the grain that you've milled and then putting at this temperature. Mm-hmm. And what you do is you take a portion of that off, bring that up to a boil, and then add that back in. And that then allows it to raise up in temperature to the next point. And so a double decoction or a single decoction is doing that step once. Double means you've done that twice. Mm-hmm. And that's expensive and hard because you're pulling off a bunch. And this is done in a big barrel system. This isn't on my stovetop doing a couple gallons. This is hundreds of gallons of beer that they're doing it with. You have to think,
if there's a temperature differential, how's that going to like net out over the whole?
And that's math.
Yeah.
So you've got to be a chemist.
You do
to be a brewer
and really know what the heck you're doing. And so Wayfinder does a lot of decocted beers. This is what they're known for, and it provides a flavor profile and a mouthfeel that's way different than what you'd standardly get from the style of beer.
Well, I was going to say, I associate lagers as being kind of generally lighter in style, a little crisper. This had more, intensity to it. It was...
So there's an excessiveness that comes with the flavor profile when they use this style of lagering, because they lager it below, like close to 40 degrees.
Robustness. Maybe kind of a robust flavor.
There's very much... So the roasted malts, they use Munich and roasted malts. Munich malt's going to give you a lot of mouthfeel. Mm-hmm. You don't typically use that in lagers because it is hard to get it to express properly because it takes a long time for it to express. The process that you use with the grains and doing a double decoction with that type of malt, which you would normally use in an ale, allows it to get the right kind of enzymes and proteins to express properly to give you that flavor profile.
More of that feature, correct. More of the flavor and what you expect for it.
This beer is really interesting. It has a great look, kind of a reddish hue on it, like dark brown. There's sort of a chocolatey roasted sugar smell on it, which I noticed. There's a slight bitterness that's kind of like a hop bitter, but more like a roast bitter on the back. Yeah, and it was so subtle. It's just more of an overall mouthfeel. The carbonation level is really on point. It's not overcarbonated at all. Some people would say it's a little flat. No, not really. It's supposed to be like that.
I thought it was just right.
Let that robustness kind of sit and linger and on your tongue, because if it's more carbonation, then the hop profile shows up, and that's not what they want to express.
What the roastiness and like toastiness of this, I would have thought, like maybe it's some kind of dark beer, like a porter or something. I'm still kind of trying to process that.
Yeah, I mean, I would also say it was kind of the malt was a little sweet.
Yeah.
And I thought of the two, I really like this.
Yeah.
Like this would be a go-to beer for me.
Well, and it matched the film really, really well.
Yeah.
Because we were in this place of, this complex, delicious beer that's
kind of down to business, but it was grim business.
And then the film was down to business, but it was grim business as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. For homebrewers and pro brewers, like, you don't see people doing decoction method because it's hard, expensive. You have to have extra equipment to do it with, because you're pulling a part of the wort out at a certain temperature, boiling that, and then adding it back in to raise it to its next. There are different rests, and that's what they're called, at different temperature points. The rests that you do, and part of also when you're making a lager, lagers can typically, because of the cold fermentation process, have esters or a little off, like
the banana.
You can get some clovey ester, not clovey, but you can get some ester. You can also get typically a little bit of rotten egg, kind of sulfury kind of thing going on. And that's acceptable with some lagers because of the yeast and what the yeast does at those cold temperatures.
I gotta say, that does not sound very pleasant.
This has none of that.
No.
Right.
No, it's very sweet.
It's
drinkable.
It's super clean, and that's what I appreciate. And they, like I said, the people making the beer at Wayfinder are dialed in. They know what they're doing, and not many breweries can replicate this style effectively like this. You can try, but it's typically not going to work because, again, it's really not an easy process, and they do it at a big scale. So. I applaud them for making a really interesting and good beer. So again, as you had mentioned, it's maybe sweet is a good way to put it, because it's not necessarily tongue coating sweet, but there's a sweetness level to it that's inviting. The bitterness is so subtle on the back. It's just a really, really delicate and good flavored beer. And I don't know what else to say about
We've had Wayfinder before.
Yeah. We've had a number of different Wayfinder beers.
And so this is Wayfinder Funeral Bock.
Yeah, it's got a cat on the label. Again, so we kind of picked it out because, there's...
Not just a cat, but a cat with laser eyes.
Laser eyes.
Yeah.
And creepy. It looks... So after we watched this film, we're sitting here looking at the can going, oh, it looks like one of the tribe...
One of the Wendells.
One of the evil death cult coming at them, because when they showed them in the film, they always had some sort of fur and horns and or mask with teeth,
bear
mask or something. And then they also showed, as part of it, when they went into the cave, we're going to plot spoil a little bit. So they attack them. They're like, you attacked us, we're going to come attack you, because how do you attack it if they're pretending to be bears? Where are they going to be in a cave? And
what's the vulnerability?
So they identify that. They go after them, and they go into the cave. One of the rooms in the cave is just full of bones and skulls and stuff, because they noticed after the first attack, they left no bodies. They took skulls and they left none of their own dead. And they're looking at each other going like, I know I killed at least 2, and where did they go? No, they took them when they left.
So there was a moment in this film where Ibn Falan has this realization of like, oh, they're just men. Oh, maybe that's a plot spoiler. Maybe we should do a warning.
No, I said that.
Oh, they're just men. So and you can see his whole posture changes because he's not fighting supernatural beings or demons.
He's no longer afraid.
He's no longer afraid.
It's a defeatable enemy.
Yeah, and it reminds me of a different line that his best friend in this movie says of, fear doesn't profit a man anything. Fear is useless because your fate is already written. It's woven by the Norns. It's in the tapestry already. Fear doesn't help you. And to kind of see Ibn Falan, his relationship to fear changes. because he's afraid of the Wendells at first. Like,
and he's even
others.
afraid to attack and do anything. He doesn't know how to be a warrior because he's not. He's a
diplomat.
A diplomat
And
he's the son of a pristine and wonderful woman. His mother, a noble woman, and so it's interesting that shift. And it's like, oh, I have to do this now, and he does it really well. So any other thoughts on this movie before we close this out?
None for me.
It's probably recommended. Maybe anybody over like the age of 12 or 13 might
No,
well, I mean, maybe they would find it interesting.
I think 10, 11, 12-year-old boys and girls would love the action.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe a little bit younger might have.
I mean, I loved Vikings by the time I was 8.
So it sounds like
back in the 50s.
All three of us
back in 200 AD.
No, back in the Viking Age.
Back in the Viking Age.
But no, I think all three of us enjoyed this film as a a fun adventure, and we each give it a thumbs up.
Yeah, check it out if you can. As always, the opinions expressed during the taping of this recording are those of the hosts. I want to thank you all for hanging out and giving us a listen. Check this film out. Check Vice and or Wayfinder out if you're in the area. They don't distribute widely. Wayfinder you might be able to find up in the Southwest Washington, maybe Seattle area. I don't think they get very far south from Portland because it is still very local. Vice Beer is very, very local. So they have 2 locations. One is downtown, a tap room, and then they have their production spaces out in East Clark County. Check them out if you can. They do good stuff. Shout out again to Imperial Bottle Shop for taking the time to chat with us and
great people.
Talk about beer a little bit.
It's a nice place.
And check them out. They are trying to support their local community, and that's what we as patrons should also do for them. So thanks for hanging out and listening, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, listener. Until next time, maybe avoid Viking funerals. You might be safer. Yeah.
And this is Brian reminding you to keep your swords sharpened.
Yes, you do. And they do that in the film a few times, too.
Absolutely.
All right, cool.
It's very important.
It is. All right, thanks, everyone. Take care.